Well, good afternoon, folks. This is Bill Costanzo, Livestock Guardian Dog Research Specialist here at the AgriLife Center in San Angelo. We've got our next Facebook Livestock Guardian Dog Q&A session here today. So I do want to thank the Sheep and Goat Predator Management Board for providing funding for the position, and also Dr. Redden, the Center Director, for providing leadership for the program. So we've got a few questions today. If anybody out there that's logging in has any specific questions, or you didn't get a chance to pre-post them, I should have some time here today to get some of those answered for you also. So first question up is from Mickey Patton. They've got two Anatolian Pyrenees pups that are about 9 months old. They've had them since they were about 4 weeks old, and they're with some Nigerian dwarf and Nubian show goats. He says that the dogs have been pretty good until recently. He caught them when they were moving some of the goats into the barn. They were going after a little wether that was pretty terrified of them, and he kind of had to stop the dogs from chasing the goat, and he scolded them, and they eventually stopped and ran off. And so he feels like he's kind of lost trust in the dogs. And so I guess what I would say is, your guardian dog is going through the adolescent times or the teenage months. And, if you didn't catch the webinar that we did a few weeks ago about adolescent behavior in dogs, I'd recommend that you probably watch that on our YouTube channel. But basically, the dogs are going through the teenage months, from about 8 months of age up to 18 months, and sometimes even, a little bit longer. There's, some breeds that mature even a little slower, and it might even be 24 months before they reach maturity. So the behavior that you're seeing is definitely normal behavior from them, but they're going to need some extra supervision during that time. And so, you have to kind of go to things sometimes like yokes if they're digging out, or dangle sticks if they're chasing stock, or drags if you got an open pasture. All those things work well to kind of slow the dogs down and keep them where they're supposed to be and doing what they're supposed to be doing. Something else that I'd suggest to you, Mickey, is we've been trying out some of those cellular game cameras, and boy, those things really work nice. They send pictures right to your phone, or you can log on and get on them on the computer too. But that would help you keep an eye on the dogs throughout the day. And then also, I would think probably one of the dogs is probably going to be more aggressive than the other one. Not so much it has anything to do with the sex of the dogs, but you're going to have a dominant dog, and that's probably the one that's causing you some of the issues more so than the other one. So that game camera would definitely help you kind of make that determination. You can go to a shock collar. I try to save those for older dogs and kind of as a last resort. So again, I would look at doing things like maybe a dangle stick or a drag, and trying to figure out maybe specifically which dog, might be the aggressor, and try to work with that dog. You definitely want to stop this behavior. But once you do, just know that, something else may come up, because they're in those teenage months, and a lot of different bad behaviors show up in all guardian dogs. And it doesn't mean that they won't turn out to be a great dog at some point. You've just got to get them through those adolescent months and provide them some extra supervision and some stern correction to stop those bad behaviors. Just one quick thing on the shock collar before I go to the next question. If you decide to use something like that, whether it's Mickey or anybody else that's out watching today with us, try not to be present when you shock the dog, because they'll start to realize that it's you causing that pain, and then they may not want to come to you. So you can set up just one of those like little portable hunting blinds, go out after work, have a cold drink, and just kind of keep an eye on the dogs for half an hour, and if they're doing something bad, then you can shock them, and it'll help stop that behavior. But I'd try to wait until they're a little bit older before you go to a shock collar. Or if you need to do that at this point, probably not necessarily have it set all the way up on high. Next question is from Hannah Campbell. She wanted to know, how do you keep escape artists home? Her dogs both apparently leave the herd and wander a lot for hours. So, a lot of times, your escape artist dogs, you didn't give me too much information on them, but, I would assume they probably weren't bonded correctly. If you bond your dogs correctly as a puppy, if you get a 6 or an 8 week old pup, and they're with livestock from birth, and then you get them with livestock and you run them through some bonding pens, most likely they're not going to roam or patrol outside of their boundaries, especially if your bonding pen has some hot wire. For those of you that have been following this program, you know that we've got a multi-year bonding project going, and we're testing single versus pairs of dogs, and then hot wire versus non-hot wire in a bonding pen. And so the dogs that have been bonded in a hot wire pen are the least likely to roam as adults. And that goes with the single dog first, and then the pair of dogs bonded in hot wire, and then it goes to just a single dog bonded with no hot wire, and then your pair of dogs bonded with no hot wire, the most likely to roam. And we're seeing that over and over again each time. And so, if you're just starting out, I'd strongly encourage you to have some hot wire in your bonding pen. But as far as controlling your dogs, some breeds of livestock guardian dogs just like bigger territories. Anatolian Shepherds, in our experience, tend to like big territories. They're more of a perimeter dog, and so they're not going to be with your herd all the time. They're going to be out, checking the fence lines, or maybe going beyond your fence line, trying to push predators out and scent mark their territories. I would recommend, depending on how large of a place you have, or I'm not sure the age of your dogs either, but if they're younger dogs, if you can put them in a small pasture or a trap of some sort and put up some hot wire around the base, probably about 6 or 8 inches off the ground, extended off the fence, a little bit, and then probably also one at the top, if they're kind of those adolescent dogs, and that should keep them where they need to be, and that'll teach them some respect for the fence line. If you're a smaller producer and you've got some extra money, I would definitely recommend the invisible fence system. That system has worked very well for us. We just installed it on 3 more pastures here. It's actually in the bonding pen pastures now also. And, while it's not necessarily a cheap system to install, I definitely think it works very well. And, our collars are set on the highest setting, and the dogs don't leave the pastures at this point. As long as you change out the batteries regularly, the dog's going to stay in that pasture. So that system definitely works if you want to look at an invisible fence system. The one that we use is from the Invisible Fence brand company. So if anybody's interested in that, feel free to drop me an email or give me a call, and I can put you in contact with a couple of those sales reps that we work with. Next question up is from Josh Bronner. He wanted to know about the ratio of livestock guardian dogs per sheep, and is it based more on the amount of geography to cover? Well, basically what we recommend usually is 1 to 2 dogs per 100 head, but that number definitely fluctuates. If you're a smaller producer and you've got a lot of predators, or you're a larger producer and you've got a lot more land, for instance, those things, that's just a good general starting point. It depends on a lot of things, like the type of livestock that you have, brush density, type of fencing, quality of your fencing. I deal with some ranchers who have extremely large places, 40, 50, 60,000 acres, and their fencing, could be 100 years old or more in some locations, and so it may not be very good. What is your management style? Do you have livestock spread across your ranch, or are you keeping them all condensed in one area? That affects how many dogs you need to have. What's your predator load? What's the terrain of the ranch? And then kind of last thing, how big are your pastures? All those things change how many dogs you have for how many head of livestock. But generally 1 to 2 dogs per 100 head is kind of what we start with. Next question is from Dwight Scott. He wanted to know any strategies or thoughts on bonding livestock guardian dogs with deer and exotics. He says it's a little more difficult to facilitate bonding with various breeds of wild, excitable hoof stock. Well, I guess I would start kind of just like we do with sheep, and I recommend the same thing for people that have asked me about poultry. Start with young dogs that have just been weaned, and get them into a bonding pen, and start with younger animals, and bond those dogs to those younger animals. And as time goes on and those dogs start to grow after a few weeks, add some more animals into the mix, and vary the age of the animals. Those puppies will learn submissive behavior from those older livestock or your older exotic animals. So it's not going to be definitely as easy as it is bonding to sheep or goats. And over time, if your dogs are guarding these, if you're breeding these animals, so you're not getting rid of them basically most of the time, over time, as you cull those older animals out, they will become, less sensitive to the dogs being there. And eventually, unless the dogs start chasing a predator of some sort, your livestock or your exotics are not going to get scared of the dogs being there. But again, it's going to be a slow process of replacing stock over time so that they get used to the dogs, and then constantly bringing younger animals into contact with those dogs as you have them. Next question up is from Brad Graves. He's got a 6-month-old Anatolian Shepherd. It's a female with some feedlot lambs, and they're going to be going out to pasture in a few months. He says, the dog likes the sheep, but occasionally plays with them. They tried a dangle stick, but the dog figured that out, and so he went to a shock collar with mild stimulation. Says the lambs are still a little wary of the dog, and I guess some people either that are on the ranch or maybe that he works with is worried about bonding dogs to the livestock, and he wanted some advice on getting the sheep to accept the dog, and then also any advice on adding pairs to the pasture later on in the year. And I'm assuming you're talking about cattle when you're speaking pairs, Brad. So I guess the first thing, I'd kind of go back, and I would recommend, Brad, that you get onto our website and probably download the fact sheet we have on bonding and training livestock guardian dogs that I put up there a while ago. It's a good fact sheet, and it's helped out a lot of people. But, again, as I have mentioned on some other questions today, it's best to start with a 6 to 8 week old pup. Have 4 to 6 head of livestock in a small pen, something roughly about 60 by 60 or, 40 by 20, I don't know, something that's small where they've got to be in fairly close contact with those livestock at all times. Make sure you rotate the livestock every 3 to 4 weeks so that the animals the dogs bond to a species and not specific animals. That's really important. And as your dog ages, add some more livestock in, start to vary the ages of the livestock that are in the bonding pen. And then about 6 months of age, release them from the bonding pens into a small pasture or a larger trap that you might have. At that point, you can mix in 20 to 30 more animals into the group with the dogs, and, even add some other older dogs if you've got them, into the mix. Since you're not in Texas and you're kind of out of state here, I would probably recommend that you don't put that dog on its own until it's at least 12 to 14 months of age, and even then, since you're up in Montana, I think that's where you said you were at, but make sure you pair that dog with some older dogs. You've got large predators there that are definitely going to kill a single dog fairly easily on its own. So only other thing I could probably recommend for you, too, is make sure you get her spayed at about 11 months of age. I know about all the research with large breed dogs, but that stuff wasn't done on livestock guardian dogs that have a very strong breeding instinct. And so that should help decrease the will of her to, want to roam and go look for a mate someplace else. Your dog is just kind of entering, again, those teenage months. And so she's going to be extra playful, with lambs that are in a feedlot situation, because she's probably not going to have a lot of area to roam and burn off energy. And so, you did the right thing by putting the dangle stick on. That's what I would have suggested, to start. If you haven't tried a drag, since it's in a feedlot, I'm assuming, you just got large open pens, that could also work well for you. A chain drag in that situation might help keep her from chasing also. And again, it's going to take time for the sheep to adjust, just like I've mentioned in an earlier post today. So, as you mix the sheep in, they're going to get calmer and more used to the dog over time. As far as adding, pairs of cattle into the mix, again, it's the same thing. If you can get younger animals, into a pen with those dogs where they're going to be in fairly close contact for several months, those animals will get used to the dogs. And then again, as you cull those older animals out and you've got those younger animals that grew up with the dogs, they'll settle in and you won't have the cattle scared of the dogs, and you won't have the dogs chasing the cattle away from your sheep either. Because that's something that is probably going to happen if you don't, acclimate the two together really well. Well, I think that's all we've got for today. I sure appreciate everyone logging on. I've got a couple minutes here if there's any questions that come up. But I do want to thank, again, the Sheep and Goat Predator Management Board for providing funding for our program here. We will be starting another round of the bonding project in the next week. So, keep focused on the Facebook page, and you'll get to see all the new pups that we've got. We are going to have some Commodore pups this time, so I'm kind of excited to see how they end up turning out and how they work here in the heat and all the brush and stuff that we have here in Texas. Looks like we do have one question that just came up. So this is from Robin. It says, this is a big question. We've got a 5-month-old female dog and have her in a smaller pen with a few goats, but we'll run her with cattle later on. We have no other pens or barns, just a wooded pasture, and we plan to introduce her to cattle after calving, putting her in pens with bottle calves where she can't get away from them. That's exactly what I would recommend, Rob. I think that's that's the ideal situation. If you can get some calves that are bottle calves that you're going to end up keeping, that will go out in the pasture at some point with that dog, that's the best situation. I know that doesn't always work for every producer, and it's definitely difficult to bond dogs with cattle because of the size of the cattle and then how long it takes to replace cattle, through the process. But I would definitely do that. Robin says they need another dog, probably 3 eventually, but they don't want too many young ones at the same time. They're in Northwest, looks like Minnesota. That's another thing. Producers make that mistake a lot of times. They'll get some dogs from us, for instance, and they work out really well, and then they're like, I really need 10 dogs, and I've got 3, and they go out and buy 7 more. Well, then they have like this huge train wreck going on. So definitely start small, 1 or 2 dogs at the most. Get them to be, 2 years of age, for instance, and that way they're out of those teenage months, and then, get yourself some more dogs. I know everybody is, under the gun and they want to save livestock from predators, but you can't rush this deal with your guardian dogs, because if you do, it's just going to be a super headache, and you're going to be calling me all the time, trying to figure out ways to deal with 4 or 5 dogs that are all going through, the teenage months at the same time. Laura asks, hi, do you have any tips on bonding livestock guardian dog puppies to donkeys and horses? Boy, that was a question I got a while back on one of these Q&A sessions. I guess it's not a very common thing that I've heard of. You're only the second person, Laura, that's reached out to me about doing this. Again, the reason, for instance, like donkeys and llamas work well as livestock guardians is because they're prey animals. And so, they're reactive to situations instead of proactive like the dogs. And so I think, your donkeys and your horses are going to probably be scared of your dogs at first. The one nice thing is, usually horses are trained where you can put a halter on them. And, if you bring the dogs over on leash, for instance, to a horse that's tied up, or, for instance, the dog is tethered and you bring the horse over, I think that process could go a little bit easier. It's definitely going to take longer. But since you can have each of them on some sort of a lead, I would just expose them gradually, day by day over time. Now, if you definitely have puppies, and I don't know if you have any young horses or not, but if you could put the dog's pen inside the corral, for instance, where you've got the horses, or if you've got like a small trap or something like that, where the dogs can see the horses all the time, and even the horses can see the dogs and hear the dogs, I think that would probably be the best recommendation. I try to recommend the same type of thing for people that are trying to bond dogs to poultry. Is you have to have the dogs under supervision at all times with poultry, and when you're dealing with large animals, especially like horses that you're trying to bond them to. So that would be probably my first recommendation. Try to have them in a pen that's inside the area where the horses are at all the time, so they can see and hear and smell those horses on a regular basis. And then every day, take the dogs out of the pen, introduce them to the horses, let them spend some time with the horses, and then pen them back up. And eventually you should be able to get to the point where, the dogs are just maybe in the pen, if you're outside working on the weekends or in the afternoons or whatever, and then, pen the dogs back up, and just progressively over time allow them more and more time free with the horses and donkeys. Robin wanted to know also, when is the best time to bring another dog in? We don't want to spay, but we want to breed her later. Probably the best time, is probably like during that adolescent time. If you're going to have a second dog, and you want to be able to breed them, so they're at least fairly close in age all the time. When your current dog is, probably getting to be around that 2-year-old mark where they've kind of settled down a little bit, but they're still young, I'd probably introduce another dog at that point in time. I would try to definitely have it as a younger dog, because a lot of times when you bring in two dogs that are the same age, you can definitely have some aggression issues going on. And especially if you're going to have intact dogs, you'll definitely have some aggression. So start with get your younger dog to about 2, and then bring in the second dog, and just kind of start going through that process. Yes, Robin, I would just keep the one for a while and get through the learning phase, especially if this is your first livestock guarding dog. You're going to learn a whole bunch, and you're going to make a ton of mistakes. Everybody does with their first dog. I did. It took me by like my third dog by the time I figured it out. So definitely just go get the one, make your mistakes, figure out what you did wrong on the first one. It'll make the second dog all the better. And that would be my recommendation to you. On your dog from a friend that's never been with livestock, it could work out, Robin. But since this pup is already 4 months old and it's never been with stock, it's past the time when its brain is going to develop those imprints and bonding that is going to need for it to be a good livestock guardian dog. It's not to say that it's not going to work out, but I would think over time, when this dog gets to be an adult, it's not going to have a strong bond, and you're probably going to have roaming, and it'll be showing up at the back porch all the time or at the headquarters. It's probably not going to want to stay with livestock. So if it was me, I know it's a free dog, but in the livestock guardian dog world, free ones are generally not a good idea to take, because there's usually a reason why there's a free livestock guardian dog. Well, I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. I'll wait here for just a second or so. I guess I'll hit on one topic. I've been getting a lot of folks sending me some stuff, at least in this area, about a lot of livestock guardian dogs in rescues and pounds and those kind of things. And so I would just caution you as a producer, Again, those free dogs are not necessarily, the best idea. Sometimes, yes, you can get a good dog from a rescue or from a pound, but there's usually a reason that they're there. It's generally because they're roaming, and that's usually because somebody didn't bond them correctly as a puppy. So really make sure you spend some time doing some research, either on our site or some of the other sites that are out there, on how to properly bond your livestock guardian dog. There's some excellent books that are out there. There's one, gosh, I can't think of the author right now, but it's a green book. It's like, selecting and handling livestock guardian dogs. You can pick it up on Amazon fairly cheap. That's a really good book. There's some really good literature and stuff on our website. If you go into our literature section, research literature, and there's some good information on there about bonding dogs, not just stuff that we've done, but Dr. Van Bommel down in Australia has put out a really good handbook on raising and using livestock guardian dogs, and she's got some really good information on the bonding process also. So, well, I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for logging on, and everybody that posted some questions live today. I always appreciate those too. Our next Q&A should be April 6th at 3 p.m. But if there's any changes, we'll have those posted with some follow-up posts on Facebook later on in the month again. So thank you, everybody, for watching. And if you have any other questions, feel free to post them on Facebook or email or call. I'm more than happy to help anybody out with their livestock guardian dog questions. So thank you very much for watching. Y'all have a good day.